I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy, presented by Western and Southern Financial Group. Put our financial strength behind you.
Hello everyone, I'm Curtis Fuller and welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. August 28th marks the 60th anniversary of the famous March on Washington, and this year, once again, thousands of people converged on the nation's capital with a renewed call for action for jobs, justice, and freedom. 6 decades later, many folks still only associate the March on Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic and powerful "I Have a Dream" speech. But the story of this important moment in history goes far beyond that one speech. Today, let's talk about what has changed since 1963 and the struggles many people still face 60 years later. I want to begin with a person whose family has maintained strong ties to the King family for many years. Here now is my conversation with Paul Booth.
Yeah, the 60th anniversary on the March on Washington is a significant and a pivotal point in our city and, of course, certainly our nation. 60 years later, we are still fighting for some of the same issues, and so to compel individuals to come to Washington to draw attention to our agenda going forward is important. My family relationship began with the King family many years ago. My late father, the Dr. L.V. Booth, worked with Dr. King's mother in what was then the National Baptist Convention. So many, many years ago. And then years later, he stepped out and founded the Progressive National Baptist Convention in 1961. Prior to that, the National Baptist Convention had dismissed Dr. King, dismissed his father. They held offices and prominent positions there, but because of disagreement on their stance on civil rights, they were dismissed. And so why is that significant? At that time, many of our denominations had their own conventions for training, for learning, and those kinds of things. And so when the Progressive National Baptist Convention was founded, a couple of years after that, Dr. King came on board, his father, many other prominent leaders came on board to that convention, which gave Dr. King a place of prominence. It gave him a platform, and it gave him what we call a denominational home. And so that's a national organization, and it continues to exist today.
I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream.
I think to that, he would probably add the issue of economic parity and economic justice. We're still fighting for voting rights. We have a voting rights bill that's pending. We have the Georgia Floyd Police and Justice Act that is pending. And so many of those key issues that Dr. King was dealing with in 1963, we're still fighting and working on those issues today. So I think he would certainly expand on his message then, but he would be adding economic parity and economic justice to his push and to his speech. Tremendous progress has been made, but again, there have been some losses. And so we want to continue to be ever vigilant to make sure that, number one, to ensure that the gains that have been made, that we continue with those gains and we continue expanding on those gains. But then two, the setbacks that we've had, we want to roll up our sleeves and we want to get involved. We all have complaints, and when I say that, we as individuals have complaints about what's going on in our world, in our city, what's going on around us. And it's really incumbent upon us to not just complain, but to do something about that complaint. Whatever it is that you have passion about, get involved in something that allows you to exercise and to work out that passion. Yeah, I just want to challenge our viewers to get involved, to do something. You hear our police and others say, if you see something, say something. And we all have to do that. That's incumbent upon all of us. If we see an injustice, if we see a disservice, if we see something we don't like, if we see people being mistreated, if you see something, say something, and then do something.
Up next, the legacy of another civil rights giant, Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, and his role at the historic 1963 March on Washington, when Let's Talk Sense continues. Welcome back, everyone. The late Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth was not scheduled to speak at the March on Washington back in 1963, but he was asked at the last minute to give an impromptu speech while bitter negotiations were taking place backstage regarding the content of the speeches by some of the other scheduled presenters. I talked with his grandson about his grandfather's role that day and the Shuttlesworth legacy in the civil rights movement.
Yeah, my mother and her sister both went, and they had their feet in the pool right there because they were just so tired from the march too. And they were young teenagers, and they were there with their father and all the different speakers, celebrities and everyone that was there that day. But very hot, but it was just galvanizing just to see millions of people gathered there at the Hall of Washington there to talk about the freedoms that Birmingham had been fighting for many years. So it was like the culmination because, Birmingham was like ground zero, all the bombing, all of the dogs and different things, the fire hoses from the fire department and that. So they basically had to look from themselves to make sure that we're here, we're understanding our father's about to speak, but again, the main speaker that day was Dr. King, and they'd kind of given everybody like a 5-minute limit on speeches. And so here Dr. King is trying to cut his famous speech down to 5 minutes. And so he said, I can't get this. And they said, no, you're the keynote speaker. So that was the memory that they knew that their father was going to be a speaker, but there was so many other different speakers there, including Reverend Shuttlesworth and others.
And speaking now to this vast crowd at the Lincoln Memorial is the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth.
Freedom belongs to anybody, it belongs to everybody. And until everybody has freedom, nobody is really free.
His teaching to us was just like Christ. He came to make of himself no reputation. So it didn't matter to him that he wasn't known as a speaker there. He wanted freedom for black people, period, point blank. And so there's now a documentary out, Shuttlesworth. It's on YouTube, and the Alabama Public Television has put that out, that shows him actually speaking. And there's a famous actor, Ruby Dee's husband, standing right behind him. And they were all there. And it's like, again, seeing it on film, it's like, wow, you talk about it all my life, but you see, yeah, he was actually there. He spoke. And so, it's just the reactionary thing. But he never had any qualms about anything, because again, he was the fighter, and he would tell you himself, he used some spicy words, not words that he would use in the pulpit, to let people know we're not going to do what they're doing to us. We're not going back, in other words. And he would just let them know, because a lot of times they were trying to be very diplomatic. He said, when dogs are biting our kids, hoses are blowing us down the street, and the racism is so overt with, of course, Bull Connor being the commissioner there. It was just, he had enough was enough, and he was dogged. He wanted to die in the movement is what he said. He said, I'd rather be killed. He said, either we're going to kill segregation or be killed by it. So the fight is on, and he was there, and God spared him 89 years. But again, the question, he just wanted to make sure it didn't matter that I was one of the speakers. I'm thankful that they recognized me, is what he would often say. But his point was not to be famous in any way, just to let people know this is going on in Birmingham. This is reality. This is not a fairy tale, and we're tired of it. And so we're coming to Washington now to say, give us what the freedoms that we all deserve in the Constitution of this country. Birmingham became known as Bombingham, but yes, to know that we've already gone through all of this, but now to see a national attention brought to it, there was a sense when they had their feet in the water, there was a sense of relief that finally somebody is hearing us, finally we're being noticed. There was no longer silence of just this little Birmingham. This is a national issue that we have to deal with as far as racism. And you had there Reverend Shuttlesworth, who on Sunday morning, he was in his pulpit. Sunday afternoon, he was flying, I don't know if it was TWA or whatever back then, but Sunday afternoon, he was flying back to Birmingham, and we would see him the next Saturday to get back in the pulpit. But that all through the week, he kept the movement going, and that was his main thing. He wanted his children to understand, yes, I'm here in Cincinnati, but I have to finish the work. And so every week, he was back and forth to Birmingham to make sure this thing was getting done. Well, the room that we sit in is called the archives room here. And these were things that were just in his basement, in his garage. Again, he never made a show of himself, but all these things that we decided, hey, somebody came in and looked at these artifacts and decided this a poster here and other things that were in the room, we're actually just going to digitize them and put them on the metaverse. But we never really overstepped anything or made a great day, but they just last year, and we're thankful for the Mayor Woodfin there in Birmingham for making March 18th Fred Shuttlesworth Day, and it was just such an iconic day of things. And of course, the documentary Shuttlesworth. So we, as a family, we've just kind of taken his lead to stay back on what we need. And so, yeah, the airport, of course, being named for him, that was just a wonderful thing. He was there. Again, that was, he actually, that was, I think, 2009, somewhere in there, but it was, the latter part of his life. But that honor, he never fought for that. But the mayor at that time, I think, was Langford in Birmingham, and he fought to get that airport named after this iconic man. And then, of course, the street here in Cincinnati, North and South Crescent, are now North and South Fred Shuttlesworth circles. And so again, him seeing that, it was kind of he was always that, don't make any fuss out of me, but he was bigger than anyone can ever imagine or believe. So again, just that, and of course, the statue down there in Birmingham that they gave him, he saw all of that. And of course, this church here, and you'll see again, I was talking about the metaverse that we're doing. They got some aerial shots with these drones of this church, and it's beautiful. It's going to be part of his legacy that we're understanding. We're still fighting the fight, and we shall overcome has to be we have overcome. We have now overcome. We thank God for Miss Shropshire and that beautiful song, but the mantra has to change now because it's time for us to get our 40 acres and a mule and then some. And so that was his fight, to make sure black people had the pride and the diligence to get what everyone in this country is entitled to. Well, again, the big three, him, King, and Abernathy were there. No one has ever picked up the mantle other than you have the Al Sharptons, the Jesse Jacksons that are galvanizing, of course, to keep the narrative going. But again, as far as the movement, this church, being, that he built it here, and there's actually a school here now, the Fred L. Shuttlesworth Christian Academy, and part of their curriculum is to teach about this man, Fred Shuttlesworth, that were in the building, that basically the house that Fred built. And so for them to know and understand, but again, getting it in the metaverse is the big thing now to make sure people know this is his story, and we're not trying to market or push anything. We just, like you said, we want to put it out there to know it's part of the lexicon of our country, is that this man was a great man, did some great things for people. But again, I as a pastor have kind of just, or as a young grandson of his, had just kind of shied away with the family. But I'm now taking the bull, I'm kicking the doors open to let them know, hey, just like you talk about great people of Martin Luther King, you talk about John Fitzgerald Kennedy, other people in our country, George Washington, Fred Shuttlesworth is in that conversation.
The Ku Klux Klan tried to blow me into heaven, blow me away. But you don't kill leaders, you don't kill the idea if you kill the person. But God saved me because he had to have somebody to go through a spectacular demonstration of his power to live in Birmingham. And when the detective said to me, he said, if I were you, I'd get out of town as quick as I can. I said, well, the officer, you're not me. And you go back and tell your Klan brother that if God could save me through this, I'm here for the duration, and the war is on.
Hearing his voice, it just re-galvanizes me to stay on my mettle as a pastor, as a grandson, and then as a quote unquote civil rights historian to let other people know. But then there's more that has to come just in saying I'm a part of the team. I need to actually step up, and if no one else will, I definitely have the DNA to step up and say, hey, the fight's not over. We have to finish this thing out, and you don't get to round 14 of a 15-round fight and say I've won. You have to finish it. So I think we're in the latter parts of that, but we have to now galvanize, and I think with all the things that we're doing here, getting connected with the new generation in the metaverse, digitizing things, people can see who he is and then live off of that and re-galvanize and re-energize this thing we call the civil rights movement in America.
For nearly 50 years, the Martin Luther King Jr. Coalition has played an active role in commemorating the legacy of Dr. King and other freedom fighters right here in Greater Cincinnati. This year, the organization recognized the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington with a community event at the church founded by Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth in Avondale, asking the question, where do we go from here?
Everyone thinks about the I Have a Dream speech, because that really what culminated that event. But if you think about it, is that event was established by a labor leader in A. Philip Randolph, right, who established the Pullman Porter, and Barnyard Rustin also, right, that these were advocates for basically economic fairness, right? And so this march was established by these folks, and they brought together all of these different groups of African Americans to ascend on Washington, D.C., over 200 and 300,000 people, and the vast majority of them were African Americans, right? And they put this together, and from my understanding, they had the dream for a while, but they put it together in like about 60 days. And so for me, I just think it is just it was probably one of the high points in American history when you're talking about people protesting for fairness. And that's why the coalition, we thought that it was appropriate to honor those folks, to commemorate, but also to celebrate the changes that were going on and connecting people, but also continue the fight that those folks, they did. To me, it's just phenomenal. If you just think about it, 1963, to get 200 to 300,000 people to ascend on Washington, D.C., especially most of them African Americans, and they probably didn't have a whole lot of means to get there. There's still work to be done. You can't undo 200-something years of slavery and another 100 years of government subsidized racism and discrimination and a generation. It's going to take, a concerted effort. I always said, just as a veteran, many of the veterans of World War II really caused this great explosion in the middle class. Well, we as African Americans really need somewhat of a GI Bill like that, right? And it has to be something that is significant, that's going to lift us out of this, when you're talking about generations of disparity. And these numbers, they still exist, and everybody can see that. But now we struggle to really find remedies how we address it. So now the coalition is looking at strategically what more can we do to advocate for those values that the King held to be true. And one of them, after reading his last book, Where We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, it's the projection of the beloved community.
Up next, the powerful moment at the 1963 March on Washington that almost didn't happen, when Let's Talk Cincy continues. Finally today, let me leave you with what will always be the most memorable part of the 1963 March on Washington, but it almost didn't happen. You see, the I Have a Dream portion of Dr. King's speech was not planned. Singer Mahalia Jackson shouted from her seat on stage, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." And then he improvised a speech that he had given at a rally in Detroit, Michigan, just a couple of months earlier. The rest is history.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Yes. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. That one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. One day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.